Welcome to the Teacher Squad podcast, episode 12. Hey Jay, number 12, what have we got this week?
Well, I don't think we can start yet, Heather, because you've just got something on your face.
Sorry.
You've just got a bit of.
It's a bit awkward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to carry on. Thanks for telling me though. We've got some workplace friends, and poetry keeps popping its head up.
And you're going to find out who calls poetry liquid mercury.
Well, I might just lose the build-up of that and just say we're so excited because we've got guest of the moment, we have got writer of the moment, the poet author of the final year, Matt Goodfellow, is going to be with us, and we're going to give him plenty of time to chat all about it with us. So we better get going. Jane, before we get into gratitude, which you know I love to be ever the optimist, I just thought I wanted to highlight something that's been highlighted to me this week. So thank you, Women Ed, for sharing about this. On, I think it was the 22nd of November, did you know that was Equal Pay Day in the UK? So, you know, we hope that we are here with our feminist vibe, standing up for women in education, even though we massively outnumber the men. This surprised me actually. Like, all of the British sectors of pay, men are paid more. That didn't surprise me. But knowing that in education we have pay scales that seem to make things fair, we are third from the top of sectors with the worst imbalance. So we've got finance and insurance at the top, then construction, and you probably would expect, and then education, 20.4%. Shocking.
Oh, yeah.
It really kind of struck me. How can we have that pay system and yet women are being paid significantly less? So, and actually when I looked a bit further into it, that was Equal Pay Day, which means from that point, 22nd of November to the end of the year, in effect, women are not being paid because of the difference. But when you look into it even further, if we're talking about women of colour and different ethnicities, their Equal Pay Day is gone, way gone, because the pay gap is worse. So we've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to do.
Yeah, we really have. That is shocking, isn't it? That is, yeah. Can you put that in the show notes?
I certainly will. I'm gonna. There's a little graph, Jane. But we are third, and down there, accommodation and food has got the smallest gap. So, you wanted to jump out of teaching and go somewhere with a fair gap, that's where you need to go.
Yeah, dear. Yeah,
Should we have some gratitude though?
Yeah. Well, you make me do this, don't you? You say it's good for our relationship. So
It's good for life, Jane. It's good for your well-being.
yeah.
Let's do it.
So I'm super psyched and thankful for, and I'm going to call this assertive compassion.
Okay.
And I want you to picture the scene. Okay, there is somebody who is very animated. They're gobbing off. They're talking to a group, or maybe just one other person.
Is that you?
Maybe. And and then you got to no. So this could be you or somebody else, but you've got to interrupt them.
Okay.
And they're mid-flow, and someone is talking, and they're on the go, but this interruption cannot even have a polite "excuse me" in front of it because it's really timely and it's a bit urgent, and you're gonna slice a bit, rudely into their flow and
Okay.
say, um, "You've got a bit of," and you're trying to do it quietly, not to embarrass them, and you've got a bit of you can't even finish the sentence because what is it going on? Somebody's talking, right? And because they're talking, you look at them. Because you're looking at them, you can see something on their face. And you can't tell them what it is because it is really grim,
Oh,
really grim.
how
Uh,
'cause I was thinking it was like sausage rolls, crumbs. Is it grim?
well, do you know what? I think do you know what? You can get a bit icked out. It can be a bit like it's a bit I don't know if I've got a bit of germaphobe in me as well, I don't know. It's a bit like
Yeah,
if I knew it was sausage roll crumbs, then
okay.
I'm not so icked out by it. But if I'm thinking that is a skin flake,
Ugh, or a bit of
ugh,
spittle.
ugh.
Spittle.
Oh, so you can't go, "Oh, you've got a bit of egg sandwich." You know what I
Oh,
mean? Or you've got a bit of bogey. Oh, you can't actually
oh.
say what it is. And like, what if they're in the hierarchy of school, like more important than you? Do you know what I mean? What if they are like they've some people have got titles I don't even understand now. Um, yeah, email them to Heather. She's getting loads of emails.
Loads of emails, yeah.
But I think in school as well, like PVA glue gets everywhere, and that can look a bit like bogey, can't it?
Egg and
PVA glue.
bogey or spittle. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
How many
Oh,
times can I say spittle?
oh yes, you've got a bit of saliva mixed with phlegm and
Ugh.
spittle dangling on your Movember.
Oh,
Rank.
Mrs. Green. Sorry. Sorry if you're called Mrs. Green. I'm sure you haven't got a Movember going on.
And I'm sorry if you've got facial hair.
Uh,
Veet. No, look, what I'm trying to say in all of that, I am grateful for the people who tell you.
yes.
I'm not grateful for the people who don't tell you, and I'm just putting it out there, I wanna be told, and I suffer from watery eye. So, sometimes when I get in my car, I look in my car mirror and I look like Alice Cooper. I'm like, "Nobody has told me."
They're frightened, Jane. They're frightened, Jane. I
Oh.
was wondering what you were gonna say then. I suffer from spittle.
Facial hair. Yes, I do. Shut up. Alright.
Oh, has this been something that's happened this week, Jane? Has somebody said, "Jane, they've
Yes.
got a bit of,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's nice to do that, and it was bogey, and it was hard for them to tell me, but they did. They hardly knew me, and they couldn't finish the sentence, and I dealt with it. So, yeah, but it's
that's
embarrassing, but
amazing.
it's still good to be told
Good for
'cause
that
it's
person."
good, brave for that person because I otherwise I'm carrying on talking and everyone's looking at it flobbing around.
How big was
No, it's not a snot rocket. It was just like a
it?
little
You
it was
said
just
flobbing around.
I
Oh, Jane.
know. Anyway, what
Yeah.
are you grateful for?
I'm glad we, overused the word spittle there because since I did a bit of, like, good words, when we read aloud from, Susie Dent. Oh, I don't wanna mention Susie, she's on the list, she's
Oh,
on the list,
she's on the
and Tom
list.
Reed Wilson. Um, I've been asking people about words, and lots of people have been sending me nice words. So I just got a few that I'm grateful that people sent me for because they feel nice. Like words like kerfuffle,
Oh,
nefarious, skedaddle, serendipity, effervescent,
oh,
shenanigan. And then
oh.
I found a really, really good one that this is for me. This is a bit of me, this word. It's a 200-year-old Scottish term meaning to lounge in bed long after it's time to get up. Hurkle-durkling.
I love that. Say it
Fancy a
again.
bit of hurkle-durkle.
Yeah. Oh, as long as it's not a scratchy blanket, I'll hurtle-durtle.
I feel like, for women of a certain age at our we're 3 months into our, budding relationship now.
Mm.
The next base, instead of it being Netflix and chill, our next base is hurkle-durkling.
Oh, I quite like that. I do. I wanna do that. I wanna do that. I rang my daughter the other day, and, she's just started dating this new guy, and I was like, "Oh, his name's Cassius," and I was like
I'm sure she's glad you're telling the nation.
I said "How's Cassius?" I said, "Do you love him? Do you love him?" Like, teasing her, and she just went, "He's next to me, mum." Like, "Shut up. God."
Awkward. Is that more awkward than having spittle or snot on your face?
Yeah, that was really awkward.
I think that was probably really awkward. And then I've got one other little bit of, gratitude because yesterday I was in my happy place, in a pub in St Ives with loads of shanty singers.
What? That's a bit weird. Like, that's so
I
specific.
It's very specific, it's very Cornish, and I love it. Everybody gets embarrassed and doesn't wanna be with me because I just get swept up in the moment and wanna sing Tom Ganaka my hey. You should come down
Oh,
next year.
no thanks.
I didn't think it was your kind of music. You are
No.
way more trendy than me and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
happy. I
Yeah.
just the richness of voices singing together, nice
Oh,
rowdy atmosphere, and a women's group as well. Because the shanties were songs for fishermen on the boats to get the rhythm of doing things, but some great female groups there as well. So big
yeah.
shout out to Acapella Moonshine, love them.
Do you have to say,
So
like, "Get your nets out, get some fish for tea"? Something like that. Dunno. What are they singing? "Come on, boys." Dunno. "Come on, boys, get some
There is
dinner."
one song, "We Newlyn girls know how to dance the polka," and it's kind of about, the fishermen coming in and them having a different man from each boat, and it's a bit
Mm,
raunchy, but it's
yeah.
good.
Mm. The
And a bit of
s
"What Can You Do?" The Drunken Sailor, I don't even know it, do I?
What do
We
you
should
do
move
but
on.
shag a sailor? What do you do but shag a sailor? Yeah, I got it. Right.
Let's do some sentences. What you been
Yes.
thinking about?
Well, I've been thinking about, and this is because this is happening between us and it's cute. Because I think you are this now, Heather.
Oh,
Workplace friendships make us feel more positive about our lives and and this is what the research says, um, help us be more creative and innovative. So
I
I
like
want to
it.
say I think we're getting a bit of a friendship, and I do feel more creative and innovative working with you. It
Oh.
yeah, and friendships should foster elation and security, and I think you get to elation and security. We got to be able to trust someone, don't you? And I think
Yeah.
we professionally trust each other. And so actually we can have little slices of joy. I'm on the wrong section, aren't I? I'm on gratitude attitude. Oh, what? Anyway.
Keep going. Roll with it. It's good. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
liking it.
roll with it, roll with it. Yeah, so I wanted to say, I love kind of having a best friend and like best friends at school. There are just so many great moments, like, you're in a stock cupboard, giggling about something that actually, you shouldn't have done, or it went a bit wang, or you said the wrong word, and you've got a bit of we coming out laughing. I love that. Or, you know, they're a mate because you kind of flump next to them at work in the staff room or wherever, and you go, "Have you got a sanitary towel?" And they're like, "No." And you're like, "Oh, I don't think I can
Ah,
stand up. Oh, no." Um, or or this has happened, your friend in teaching starts mispronouncing something, and you gotta call them out about it,
ah.
onomatopoeia, like, hello, and you can but it's just and you can rinse them for it, and I love that. So what I'm gonna say to sum it all up is make friends, never ever break friends, but don't sleep with them because that can make it complicated. But I still might sleep with you in that Scottish sort of blanket cuffle
Yeah,
muffle,
we can
whatever it is.
hurkle-durkle, can't we?
Hurkle
Yeah.
cuffle muffle. What am I talking about? Cuffle muffle in your hurkle durkle.
Ooh, keep your hurkle-durkle to yourself. Oh, I like that, Jane. Yeah, definitely. Definitely
Thought you
need to
would.
have those your people
Yeah.
and right back at you with loving this
Yeah. Yeah, lovely.
relationship. It's
Yes.
lovely. Is that your sentence done?
That's
You've
me.
managed to be super short and snappy there.
Thanks, honey.
Ah,
Well,
I
you're
think
gonna go on and on and on now. You think you can take my 3
yeah,
minutes?
yeah, I think we agreed that we would be short and snappy this week because have we got a great guest for you? We wanted to, leave enough space, but yeah, so I changed what my sentence of the week was going to be because I thought, oh, that one's a bit long. I'll switch that to next week, give a bit more thinking space. And this one's influenced by our guest coming on. So it's a short sentence, but I think I've got a bit to say about it. So I'll have to be succinct, which is another good word, isn't it? Here's my
Yeah.
sentence. Poems keep popping up. I
Mhm.
feel like we've got Matt Goodfellow coming on, a book written in verse. Last week with Dr. Tim Rosinski, we were talking about, the use of poetry and it being amazing. Um, we've read some poems in Wonder of Words, and yeah, it just feels like maybe I've just been noticing them a little bit more and
Mhm.
appreciating them. Um, yeah, so I feel like this is a bit of an ode to poetry again. And I know I've done poetry in sentence of the week, and I did have a little listen back to make sure that I didn't repeat myself. But yeah, they keep popping up. So here's a few of the things that keep popping up to make me just love it even more.
Yeah.
So I shared some words from Tom Reed Wilson's book. And oh, thank you, Tom, for resharing our podcast as well. That was amazing. Um, but he has committed. Um, it's not this year because I think it's going to take him like 2.5 years or something to learn by heart one of Shakespeare's sonnets, so all of the sonnets, and he performs them each week. And I thought, oh, and it's magical. You really need to have a little listen of that. And it made me think about, I don't know whether I've mentioned this, when Dame Judi Dench was on Graham Norton's show, and
Yeah.
she recited, just off the top of her head, Sonnet 29 it was, and it was as if she stopped time. And Nicola Davis at the nonfiction conference, she read a beautiful poem, and it kind of, uh, it's just tickled in my brain that thought about things staying with you and whether you've got any poems that are stuck in your mind that you can recite. And the one that sticks with me is A.A. Milne. There's a little bit of us too. Wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. Whatever I do, he wants to do. Where are we going today, says Pooh. Well, that's very odd, because I was too. Let's go together, says Pooh, says he. Let's go together, says Pooh. Do you have any poems that,
Oh. Well, do you know what? I have better than poems, but I sometimes have a menopausal brain, and I'm actually on Google as we speak. Not because I'm going to Google a poem, but I listen to regularly a poetry podcast, and it's by
well,
someone famous, and I can't remember his name. Do you know who I mean? No.
I don't know, because I'm gonna
Oh
recommend
yeah,
a poetry podcast as well. Go on, let's
what?
see if it's the same.
Frank Skinner.
Oh, no, it's not, but I haven't come across that one.
Oh, I
Is it
just
good?
love it. I just love it, and there's no bells, there's no whistles. It's just and sometimes he reads a line 3 times, and, he's on the list. Oh.
Oh. This is a long list. You say 10, but I feel like we may be up to 10 already, but there we go.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
But
great. I love poetry. I love it.
But I love it, and I feel like that through doing this, and talking about it and engaging with it, and it's just brought it back to my mind, and I'm hoping that that's what we're doing for our listeners and inspiring them to bring it into the classroom. So we've got Matt coming on. And we're talking about the final year, which is inspired by Skellig. And right at the end, they give the baby a name, and they toss around Persephone, don't they? But in the end, they
Yeah.
go with the name Joy. And I came across a poem about joy.
Yeah.
I think it was on Instagram.
Yeah.
And there's a poet called Harry Baker Poets. That's his tagline, Harry Baker Poet. And he shared a poem. Now, found out a little bit more since kind of finding it, because I thought, oh, that's amazing. And he hosts a monthly poetry night, and he records that live as his podcast. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And the podcast is called Something Borrowed. So he has a guest poet on, and him and the guest poet each share something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, each a poem. And one of the poems that he shared, his borrowed poem, by Donna Ashworth, is called Joy Chose You. Can I read it to you, Jane? Are you going to
Yeah.
let
Would
me?
you please? Yes.
Joy does not arrive with a fanfare on a red carpet strewn with the flowers of a perfect life. Joy sneaks in as you pour a cup of coffee, watching the sun hit your favourite tree just right. And you usher joy away because you're not ready for her. Your house is not as it should be for such a distinguished guest. But joy, you see, cares nothing for your messy home or your bank balance or your waistline. Joy is supposed to slither through the cracks of your imperfect life. That's how joy works. You cannot truly invite her. You can only be ready when she appears, and hug her with meaning, because in this very moment, joy chose you.
Oh,
So
wow.
I thought that was great, and I just keep finding all this poetry that just keeps touching me and inspiring me. So I think I need to shout out. That's a great podcast. It's not poetry for the classroom, but Something Borrowed by Harry Baker. Go and have a listen. It's absolutely brilliant. And just one more, a little. Do we call them tweets? I'm going to call it a tweet. Um, by an account called Little Flowers, and she'd shared, Poetry Club has grown. We started with just one child, and now we have 7 lovely members. Last night we drank hot chocolate and marshmallows and used the brilliant Apes to Zebras and A to Z of shape poems as our stimulus. That's at Pegswood Primary. I thought, yes, go you. So, yeah,
Brill.
poetry keeps popping up, and I love it.
Good. Oh, thank you, Heather.
Does that lead us? Does that segue us into our amazing guest? We're excited, aren't we?
Absolutely. So excited. Well, this is the coup of the century. We have got Matt Goodfellow, and I've been reading his poetry behind the scenes for years. And I mean, all of his work is utterly stunning. But this lyrical retelling of Nate's life is blowing up on the internet. I'm going to wave a copy here. Heather's got hers. We're delighted he's here. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Good, good.
Oh, welcome, Matt. I had a few phrases that you may recognise where I've stolen them from to describe you as our guest. This is where we're really bigging you up to, make sure that you have a good time. Because I was going to say that we've got Matt Goodfellow, an extraordinary being, and he is the nectar of the gods. You
Oh,
recognise?
Very nice.
But
Very nice. I like it.
let's start with a fun question. So, for the final year, Skellig was obviously a massive influence and inspiration for you. But Michael ordered number 27 and number 53 for Skellig. So I'm interested in what are you ordering from the Chinese?
Oh man, it's got to be a special chow mein, hasn't it?
Is that
Special
it?
chow mein. Yeah. Well, for me, if it's special chow, if I've got my daughter with me, my daughter tends to go for the same thing every time. Daisy likes a sweet and sour chicken. If I've got my dad with me, it's like everything on the menu.
Does he share though? Do you have to get like I don't know whether I like it when people get different things and they go, we'll share, and then you don't get as much as you want.
My dad does that thing where you just get the whole pot of rice and he just sticks the whole thing on his plate.
As
No,
a rectangle mould.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. That's exactly what my dad does, yeah.
I don't know what they're called, but I like battered chicken balls. Are they?
Right.
Who'd have thought you'd
Moving
have said
on.
balls, Jane?
Who'd have thought it? Anyway, what I want to ask you, Matt, listen, I want to ask you so much, and we will never get to playtime if I carry on asking all the questions I've got in my head. So I've really had to cut it back. But for me, the book just resonated with authenticity and the teacherness of it and the knowing of school. You know, like the real sense that you know it. And I mean, these are probably very minor in the book, but things like now you've never seen Christmas. I'm quoting here. Now, you've never seen Christmas till you've seen it in a primary school. And just a very, very small moment when they're on the coach going on the year 6 residential. And Mr. Joshua's words, they're just so real when he says, okay, guys, settle down, please. And it's little, but it just is, you know, the fading name tags on the drawers, the pile of PE bags in the back of your class, the stink of the year 6 classroom. You know, how do you ensure that it was authentic? What is your thinking process? What is your internal monologue there, Matt?
Well, I obviously was a year 6 teacher. And so all of that stuff I've said, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We've been on the residentials and all that stuff. And it helps also that the editor, Charlotte Hacking, is also a former primary school teacher. So when during the editing process, we could sit and have a chat about it and
Yeah.
work out, would a teacher say this? Is this how it would be done? So, but the idea was to make it as authentic as possible, because that's what we wanted to do,
Of
and
course, of course.
hopefully,
And
hopefully, sort of achieved some of that.
can you say more about it's not just in the teaching-us, it's in things like accent and dialect as well. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I wanted to write the book in the accent and dialect of the main character because it's part of his identity, it's part of his cultural heritage, and I think as teachers, there's so much stuff about standard spoken English that Ofsted are still looking for, which in my opinion is very outdated. We've done quite a lot of work with a couple of linguists at Manchester Met who have talked about Ofsted's use of standard spoken English. And I believe that, articulating yourself is we should all be proud of our voice. We should all be proud of the voice we've grown up with. And what we wanted to do was have Nate talking in his authentic voice.
Yeah, it was so palpable. It was so important, and there was no time when reading that it didn't reveal his truth or his struggle or a coping or a not coping mode. When you read it, it's not like, oh, it's a shame he didn't use some different, more nuanced words. You never felt that. It was still so palpable of an experience as a reader. And yeah, you just wow.
Yeah.
I think you've changed me, Matt, forever.
It's
Well,
not
I think
often
the
she's
thing,
wordless.
the thing with poetry is as well is because people are inherently nervous, or a lot of people get nervous about poetry. because generationally, the way the education system works at times, and it's never the teacher's fault, is generation upon generation of young people have left high school, for example, feeling disenfranchised by poetry, and that poetry has to be this and it has to be that. And one of the greatest things that poetry offers you is a chance to speak in your voice and about your life. And therefore poetry doesn't need to, I mean, yeah, it can be opaque, it can be difficult to understand, it can be florid, but one of the greatest things it can do is capture the cadence of your natural speech. And what I was trying to do was show that you know life experience, voice matters, and it can be written very poetically in the most simple language.
Yeah. And will you please stop saying try, Matt, because you have done more than it is just so superb. It is back of the net, it's excellent. It really is
Yeah.
show stopping. Loved it.
Absolutely, and it's just been embraced by the teaching community, definitely online for what I've seen. Has that surprised you, Matt? Did you expect it to be this rip-roaring success?
Not really. One of the things about writing and putting books out is you're never really sure about anything creative, I suppose. You're never really sure what the reaction is going to be. But the support of teachers, the support of librarians, the support of Instagram book bloggers has been incredible. And what's so beautiful about it is the ground up kind of word of mouth thing. That there's not been a very expensive publicity and marketing campaign around this book. It's been word of mouth stuff from people genuinely being affected, I suppose, by the book and recognizing the lives within it. So no, I never expected it. I mean, it's been brilliant. It's so great to see the whole thing unfold. Yeah, it's been a beautiful thing.
Ah, it is beautiful. You touched upon the fact that poetry isn't done well in school. So I found a quote from you talked about working with the lovely Charlotte at the CLPA, and this is from Farah Sarouk at the CLPA. Says poetry is a particularly powerful medium that provides scope for sincere, heartfelt insights into the thoughts and feelings of others, and through such honesty gives license to the reader to feel, connect, and reflect. Yet, in the Poetry in Primary Schools 2023 research from the CLP, they found that 61% of teachers have never had development training on poetry, and 79% of classroom book corners have fewer than 10 poetry books in their selection. And I imagine some of that selection is probably a bit dated and naff as well. There seems to be a fear around poetry, or a kind of it gets pushed off the end of the timetable. I've seen you deliver poetry training to teachers at a Reading Rocks event, probably, I don't know, 4 years ago in Liverpool. And you are a captivating deliverer of poetry. You grabbed your audience and drew them in and engaged them in writing poetry. How can primary schools get a little bit of that? They can't all be you. But how can we be better at poetry in primary?
Well, I don't think I don't think the poetry's not necessarily done well. I think what it is there's a general generational lack of confidence about poetry. But if you're a my 18-year-old son left high school thinking that poetry was nothing to do with his life, and his dad's a poet. And so if you grow up, a lot of young people become teachers that maybe have learned that poetry isn't something for them. And again, it's not the teachers at high school fault. It's the way the education system puts so much pressure on teachers to teach any kind of writing in a particular way. The greatest thing that I think that teachers can do is get poetry heard in the classroom on a daily basis. It's not rocket science. Yeah, and also, like, the CLP has loads of brilliant free resources, loads of videos, and if you let young people see that poets come in all different shapes and sizes, every different accent and skin color you can imagine, and people that speak in their accent and be proud of it. Young people need to see, and some teachers as well, that if they are nervous about poetry from their own educational experiences, people need to see that poetry does everything that you can imagine. It's like mercury; it can't be pinned down, and to get it exposed in the
Oh,
classroom.
say that again, Matt.
She likes that.
But it is though, and the only way to understand that and to let teachers and young people know that is by getting it heard. And as a teacher, having those conversations with kids and saying, "Oh, look at this poem today; it's completely different than the one we looked at yesterday. There's no punctuation in this one. This one is quite difficult to understand. Is that okay?" And if you're having those conversations and seeing what poetry can do, everybody begins to understand without any pressure that here is a writing space that is different. And in my opinion, it becomes the only space in the current education system where teachers have autonomy to facilitate creativity in a way that nobody can walk into your classroom and say, hang on, this isn't a year six poem because it doesn't contain this and this and this. What we're saying to the young people is, here is a space where you are free to articulate yourself and you can talk about your life and you can do it in your voice. You can do it in your accent should you choose to. And you have the autonomy, and the teacher has the autonomy to deliver that in a way without the worry of somebody looking over the shoulder and saying, do you know what I mean? It's just a different space. And the only way to understand that is by getting it heard on a daily basis, a poem a day, watching a poetry video a day, and exposing young people to that and allowing them to make the decisions about, okay, because not everybody wants to be a poet. But that exposure helps. And also gives teachers a chance then, without any extra work, to be putting themselves in front of poems that maybe they can use and manipulate and use as scaffolds to get the PSHE curriculum pushed through the poetry stuff. Let the young people talk about it, but it's just that it's got to be the exposure to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really empowering when you look at it in that way.
Yeah. Oh, Matt, it's incredible to remind us as teachers the power of that space. Actually, it really is, and just listening there, that you can't pin it down. It's like Mercury. That's really sort of. I do love a bit of a kind of a visual like that. That's really going to stick with me. Unlike Mercury, of course, but
Are you taking that one, Jane? Put it in your pocket. You can have that one.
I'll have that. As I'm listening as well, I'm thinking there wasn't a poem for me growing up in Birmingham called "All Bab," but I'm going to write it now.
Yeah, but there are poets, like if you listen to Liz Berry. Liz Berry, writes in a Birmingham accent. She's, and it's that freedom, capturing the cadence of the way that we speak and allowing people to be proud of the cultural heritage wherever the starting point was, whatever their accent and dialect is, and being proud of it and saying this is who I am. Here's a space where I can do that. And teachers' lives are so busy, and especially when it comes to writing, there's so many plates to spin. There's so many plates to spin for the kids and the young people, and poetry is just a different space. But it's just they've got to be immersed in it. Otherwise, everybody just gets nervous about it. And you can't walk into a bookshop really and find, or a library, or a lot of them, and find poetry accessible. It's hidden away around corners and stuff like that, and it all gathers this idea that poetry is a difficult, troubling sort of thing, when you can do what you want with it.
Yeah. That freedom is so crucial, isn't it? And making sure that poetry isn't hidden round corners. That pride is kind of right up there in lights, and kids can
Yeah,
see a
no, but
bright way to kind of latch onto it. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
when I trained to be a teacher, I did the PGCE, and like there was no talk of poetry at all on the training. When I started teaching, teachers generally would do poetry if they really had to, and it generally involved like the Highwayman or
Yeah.
Kit Wright's Big Box, and they're
Yeah.
great poems. But like it's just because there's no support network there, and getting poetry into the classroom on a daily basis is a way to raise people's confidence levels. Again, both the teachers and the young people, to say, here's a different space. And even within, if you look at what Mr. Joshua is able to say to Nate about the education system, it's probably the way a lot of teachers feel. And you're able to go, well, actually, here's a space where we can put the voices of our community at the centre of what we're trying to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
Here is
think the
this space.
power in the book, Mr. Joshua is like definitely a character that one of the beauties of children's literature is that it's great for kids, but it's actually great for adults as well, and it talks on many levels. And I think that connection with Mr. Joshua and how he feels is one of the powers of the book.
Yeah, and I think I think one of the reasons I think probably why it's resonated with teachers a lot. Hopefully, it is authentic, and it feels like a real classroom and a real school environment. But also, teachers, the reason why people become teachers is they care about young people's lives. They want to help young people. And so much of when I was a teacher was bound up by pressure and the rules and that job as a teacher, it never gets any easier. No teacher's workload ever lightens. It's the things just more get added up, and through no fault of our own as teachers and educationists, at times we can't do the things that we want to do, that we got into becoming teachers for, because we end up in a system where we're pushed from pillar to post to satisfy whatever government diktats come through. Poetry is a completely different space, and I think getting it into the classroom helps us all understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of things you were saying there. First of all, I mean, I just wanted to say a PGCE is the harshest way to train as a teacher. So all any ECTs out there who've gone that route, I mean, that's such a tough road into it, isn't it? It's so hard. You suddenly got your class, and you're just like, well, this has been 9 months of thinking. I mean, it's the same amount of time to grow a baby, but now you've got 30 of babies. I mean, it's a killer. That's a tough route in, isn't it? And I just wanted to say to our listeners, really, if you're new into teaching, you've gone that route, are you okay?
It is a difficult way into it, and also you're dealing with young people's lives, and young people's lives do have trauma and do have grief and sadness and stuff, and really you're learning on the job. It's all that stuff that teachers, it's a very difficult job. If somebody, if you have a child in your class that is grieving, you really get no extra training on that at times, and it's a very, very difficult job. And hopefully the Mr. Joshua, what I wanted to do, that is a bit of a love letter to teachers and teachers
Oh,
working within an industry that often has them teaching with one hand tied behind the back. And Mr. Joshua, I think, is somebody that at the start of our teaching careers, we come into things with such positivity to affect young lives, hopefully positively. And so it was great to have the character Mr. Joshua as really trying to do that, and really trying to negotiate the stuff that he has to do and the stuff that he has to say, because he's employed in the education system, but also showing that he's a human being dealing with human beings that have things happen to him. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Humanity, that is really strong in the book, isn't it? And that is what is the beauty of teaching as well, isn't it? The complexity of life. And I think we've all, not all of us, but a lot can picture a Nate that we've taught, and actually that pull and that draw of being the person who can help them in some way, shape or form is what draws us as teachers, isn't it?
And year six, especially, I did 8 years as a full time class teacher, and then 3 years part time. And I think 5 of those 8 years, I was a year six teacher for 5 of those 8 years. And it's a very difficult, nobody in the education system works harder than the adults and the young people in year six. And there is so much pressure. But it's such an exciting time in those young people's lives. They're on the threshold of moving, and it was a privilege to be a year six teacher working with those kids, but a very difficult job. And I take my hat off to everybody that's still teaching.
Yeah. I was just reflecting there as you were talking. I've got a sense that Mr. Joshua might be a little bit autobiographical. I mean, I think you can't write like that unless you've probably felt or lived something like that. In your teaching life,
Yeah.
Matt.
Absolutely. Everything I ever write is a combination of 3 things. It's my life, lives that I've seen, and stuff that I make up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
that's all within the story. You know,
Yes.
there's massive elements of that story that I saw happening. Of course, there's elements of me in Mr. Joshua. There's elements of me in Nate. There's lots of different autobiographical things in there. There's lots of my family within the book, and
Yeah.
there's lots of things that I've seen, and then there's the fiction stuff that we put in there to make a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that really came across, and I don't, I mean, there's so many messages intertwined in there, but that feeling, there's a bit of a guilt bomb. I'm going to just say it with this book of I don't know, sometimes as teachers in our busy, hectic, sort of manic world that is the classroom, um, that like, are we really valuing children's love or children's friendships of each other? Because, what are we saying all the time as teachers? They come up to us on playground duty and we can say, oh dear, go and find someone else to play with then. Oh, never mind. You'll be friends again soon, And it's just, I don't know if we give enough space to how brutal rejection can be for kids. Like their friendships aren't as real and as like
Mm.
gnarly and hard and difficult as our friendships and relationships. And yeah, I just felt really guilty that I was not like Mr. Joshua at all. I was like the cowbag, you know.
Well, I mean, Mr. Joshua, he's a very, very good teacher, isn't he? That cares about his job. But it's the stuff that I was saying before. Every teacher that I've ever met carries that within them, and it goes back to the point that you don't get into becoming a teacher because you don't care about young lives. You get into teaching because that is what. And but teachers, it becomes so difficult at times to negotiate each day because of the education system that sometimes stuff can be pushed out. But inherently, I'd be amazed to meet a teacher that didn't care about young lives. So, and Mr. Joshua just allowed me to use him as a mouthpiece, I suppose, for some of my views on the education system, some of my, how difficult it is to be a teacher. And but also, I think the reason I had him as an ECT is that people that come into the education system come in full of energy and full of passion and full of care and empathy and love. And Mr. Joshua, is able to spot the fact that Nate's struggling, and spots it right from the start when he recognises him regulating his breathing. He's already heard from the last teacher about him, picks up on that, and that is the teaching community. That is what teachers want to do and be like. And Mr. Joshua is just able to do that at this stage within this story.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Before it becomes bitter and twisted and not noticing.
I hope not, but he's got that overt compassion and empathy, hasn't he? And also
Yeah,
he's got the ability to be able to spot those young people and make a point of wanting to get involved and wanting to support that and change that in immensely difficult situations. And I've seen that time and time again with teachers.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was Skellig always to be part of it when you came up with the concept of the book? Was
Mm.
it always did it always have Skellig woven through?
Um, I can't remember, to be honest. I mean, Skellig was a book that I read. I mean, I was supposed to be a rock star, and that was the dream. And when my rock star ambitions died, I became a teacher. My sister was a primary school teacher, and I read two books, Skellig and a book called The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman.
Neil
Yeah,
Gaiman.
yeah,
And I read both of those, and I was like, you know, kids' books can have it all. Kids' books can have depth and subtlety and nuance, and so Skellig was something that deeply affected me, really. And I think I can't remember at the point. that I started thinking about Skellig as well. But we read some books that stay with you, like you were saying before, Jane, stuff stays with you. And when I read Skellig, I was like, here's a writer that can do something different, that can write for young people and not talk down to them, and talk about depth and talk about grief and subtlety.
Yeah.
So yeah, to be able to tie that in, I mean, I met David Almond last week, funnily
I
enough.
saw your photo on the socials. I was going to say, did you have a chat with him about the book, or did you get a bit tongue-tied? How was it?
Oh no, he's such a nice guy. You don't write like he can write without being the sort of human being that has empathy and love and kindness and care. So he
True.
was just the most beautifully, softly spoken, nice guy, and it was a pleasure to meet him. And he came down specially to meet me. I was in between book events, and
Wow.
with a brilliant independent bookshop, and obviously the independent bookshops have been as important as anybody in the success of the book. And he was just brilliant. He was just so nice and generous. So it was great.
Has he
Oh,
read it? Any of it?
Oh yeah, yeah, he's read it because the one person I wanted as a quote on the back of the book was him. So we
I should know
spent
that, shouldn't I? Of
spent quite
course.
a I spent quite a nervous bit of time waiting to hear back from him whether he would read it and give us a quote for it. So I was delighted when he did. Yeah.
oh, yeah, it's yeah, brilliant. I've got a couple of other things I want to ask you, and I don't even know if this is a question. Probably not even a question, but I just wanted to say it. It was sometimes there's much smaller things that really kind of struck a chord with me, but I really loved the counselling section, and I don't know whether that's sometimes, like how books do, like you connect with certain things because of certain things that have happened in your own life, so they become magnified for you in how you interact with it. But uh, when Nate goes about counselling, but I'm not doing any of that stuff ever again, and that he has just realised that counselling isn't for him. He's got a different way that he's going to process things, and he's going to talk with his pen. And that just that recognition that there's been kids that we know or work with in the past where counselling is not the right medium for them to kind of get through stuff. And some children want to communicate without words. So, actually, counselling would be like a really tricky thing for them. Because it's not always words, is it? It can be written down, and sometimes it's actions. And like some people hate counselling, and I just thought
Yeah.
there's a real honesty locked in that. It's not a question, I know, but yeah.
Well, again, it's that thing, isn't it? That it's that combination of my lives that I've seen and stuff that I make up. We've all seen things that work for some people that don't work for others. And it's picking and choosing what you want and molding it into a narrative that kind of expresses what you want to say. And the book, I wrote the book in a very difficult part of my life. I got divorced, and it turned into like the most acrimonious divorce in the world. And I was writing this book. I had to move in with my dad for a year. And the interesting thing, and I was talking to David Allman about this, was that I only realized this when I read the book back. A lot of Mr. Joshua talking to Nate is me talking to myself during
Mm.
that period of time, And I was talking to David Allman about it the other day, and he just sort of tapped me on the arm and he went, "Yeah, you only find out what they're about once you've written them." And I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah, yeah."
Oh, wow. I've got goosebumps when you say that. And if poetry isn't anything, it's about truth. And the fact that you've come here today, Matt, and just been so truthful. I mean, please do not ask me to be truthful, God, about my life at the moment. For God's sake, I'd lie
But I do,
anyway. I'd lie.
when I work in schools and I work with teachers and kids, I'm honest about the fact that my childhood was difficult, and like that life is difficult, but hopefully there is always hope, and there is always a way to express yourself in whatever medium that you have, because not everybody wants to be a poet, not everybody wants to be a writer, but that life is difficult at times, but that
Yeah.
hopefully we can gather tools that will allow us to understand that in those periods, in what's the quote from the book, the darkness switches on the lights,
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, uh, yeah, you've touched so many people with this book, and I love that actually the process of the book has been important for you as well. And all that you've done is left the teaching community and children in classrooms is wanting more. So lots of people want to know, what are you writing next?
What am I writing next?
Oh,
Uh,
that seems like it's a good question.
well, I am planning
Don't
to
tell
write
her.
a sequel. Yeah, I'm planning to write a sequel. Yeah, but
Okay.
we'll see how that goes. It's got to be as good or better. I have no intention of ever writing the same book twice. And if a book has resonated with so many people, what you can't then do is write something that goes a bit flat. So there's pressure putting
Pressure's
it
on
out.
this time. It's
Yeah,
harder to write a sequel, isn't it, than the first one? At least, yeah, the hope is there with the first one.
but for me, it's hopefully it's about pushing your parameters and seeing what you can do as a writer.
Yeah. Can I ask you one question? Because we we talked about your book. Jane read some of it out, and I'd shared that it had gone in our subscription box. And we kind of, I think Jane actually put it out there into the universe and said, "That's going to come on this podcast." And then suddenly you messaged him and said, "I believe you want me on the podcast." And the universe had done its work, and we're very grateful that you're on. I wonder if there's anybody that you think we should have on here that would have a good discussion that our teacher squad community would really like, because you've obviously got something going on with the power of the universe there.
But you have to get David Almond on, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Well, David did actually want to come on and share a message, but his diary didn't allow it this week. We very much wanted to surprise you with him coming to do a little reading for you, but unfortunately, he's such a busy person. So I'm glad you've met him this week.
Yeah, also I think get more, get poets on. I'm sure you got poets on. There's a brilliant poet called Dom Conlon, who's a beautiful writer, and getting people on. Charlotte Hacking would be great to come on and talk about the work that she does. But yeah, I think poets talking about poetry, talking about why they write and stuff, is always a great thing to get on.
Yeah, well, it's out there now. Let the universe do its work, Jane.
Yeah. Oh, Matt, it's been amazing, and it's ever since reading it, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I think I might need to reflect upon my own beast within myself. I might have to be taken to the sunshine room. Oh dear.
Don't let it out,
Oh,
Jane.
with all of that stuff, I mean, I was very, very lucky that Joe Todd Stanton agreed to do the illustrations, because the illustrations are obviously beautiful and elevate that. And Joe's a much bigger name than I am, so to have him there was brilliant as well. And again, that was down to Charlotte Hacking, that made that happen. So yeah, we were very, very lucky. And you think about the illustrations of the beast, yeah, Joe just really got it, and gives a space for the words and elevates the words in a really special way.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, well done for mentioning Joe. We definitely should have done that. Do you know Joe has drawn a picture of me before? He was our patron of reading for a year, and
Oh,
Oh, cool.
on one of the days he visited, I was dressed in a full gold lame deep sea diver outfit, and he drew me in that. So
I hope he drew you with a small head, Heather.
no, massive, big, massive head, and a cup of tea in hand. I think
He's a really Joe as well. He's a really nice, quite understated, quietly
very.
spoken guy. Really, really sound guy.
Yeah, he's really talented. I'm incredibly humble with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
nice
is.
guy.
Oh, Matt, that was incredible. I hope you're going to stick around, please, and help us with the wonder of words.
Certainly will. Yeah.
So Jane, Wonder of Words, our favourite section, but we're going to go a bit different this week. You know, it's difficult to shut you and I up and to stop us sharing words. But whilst we have such a wonderful guest, we've kept Matt on. I thought it'd be really nice for Matt to do Wonder of Words. And we've asked you, Matt, to share a little bit of the final year with us and our gorgeous listeners. So I'm hoping that you've chosen some great sections. Can you tell us what you've chosen? And then we're just going to sit back and we're going to let the words waft over us and enjoy, aren't we, Jane?
Yeah, defo. Yeah, can't wait.
What have you got, Matt?
I'm going to read you a poem called "Have You Ever Felt Lost?" And it's at a part of the book where Nate is struggling a little bit, and he's talking to Mr. Joshua. Yeah, and you want me just to read it? Yeah.
Go for
Yes,
it.
please.
Okay. Have you ever felt lost, sir? With no handholds and you're stuck in the tail of life, with it all just spinning on round you. Mr. Joshua's sitting marking maths books at the end of the day. The last of the masses still dithering on the playground. He closes the book. Yes, Nate, I have. But the thing I want you to understand is that in order to really find yourself, you first have to be lost out there in the wilderness. It's nothing to fear. And when the darkness comes and you think you can't find a way, that's when it happens. Yes, you are lost for now, Nate, but only certain people see that darkness and understand that really it's the darkness that switches on the lights. You've got that light, Nate. You will refine who you are, and what's happening will change you, shape you, but that's okay because it will not break you. Dylan will fight, Nate. He will, and you must too. He looks out across the playground to somewhere miles from here. In the darkness, you will find yourself and your people, those who have seen it too, those who navigate and find a way. Stick with those people, Nate. Stick with yourself, your pen, your dreams. Ideas will guide you. You can't ever change things that happen around you, and all you can do is continue your journey. Whatever happens, don't fear the darkness. For a few seconds of silence, we're in a dream, clothed in fog, and Mr. Joshua's ahead of me, almost out of sight, talking about darkness, talking about light, and somewhere I hear feathers moving in the wind.
Have you got goosies, Jane?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And just knowing actually where that is in the book, it's just so poignant. Oh, yeah. Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. I think when you hear it direct from the poet themselves, and it's just laden with all of that voice and that passion, yeah, it's very, very. Ooh, yeah, I've got tingles and a bit of a frog. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on. It's great, and thank you for the support around the book. It's been brilliant. Thank you to all the teachers, the librarians, the indie bookshops, everybody that supported this. It's been a brilliant movement to see. So thank you very much for all of that support.
Oh,
Yeah,
brilliant. And
definitely.
I hope you have sewn all your own sequins on your outfit. That's a really good thank you to everyone. We don't normally have that amount of thank yous, but yeah, what a nice guy you are, Matt.
Oh, we can't let Matt go without asking you to give a book recommendation to the Teacher Squad podcast community. So is there something recent you've been reading or something that, has stuck with you that you'd like to shout out about?
The most interesting book that I've read recently, and it's not appropriate for a primary school classroom, is a book called Bear Mouth. If you're interested in the sort of the accent and dialect stuff, have a read of that book. It's by a writer called Liz Hyder. It's an incredible book just to read and have a bit of a think about it. Skellig, obviously. Also, if you've not read Skellig, go and read Skellig. But yeah, there's so much incredible stuff being out at the minute. But yeah, Bear Mouth is the book that has made me stop and think the most recently. But
Thank you for sharing that.
Not for a primary school classroom.
We repeat, not for the classroom. Can I just jump in on Skellig? Sorry, Jane, and say that
Yeah.
if you haven't read it or you want to do a reread, like I thought I'd reread it before we talked to you. I did it by audiobook, and David Almond actually narrates his own book, so to hear it with the accent is really, really good. Sorry, Jane.
Oh, I know. I was just going to recommend this book, Matt Goodfellow. You might know it. Let's Chase Stars Together, because my favourite poem in there, which I think is almost like, you know, the final year almost grows from that, is Transition. And that is a cracking poem. I love that poem. Yeah, really good. So that's my recommendation. Brill.
Look, I had the same book with my bookmarking, all the colours of the river I like. So, yeah, get yourselves a copy of that, guys.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Matt.
Cheers.
We better let him go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.
Oh, Jane, we built that up, didn't we? And it did not disappoint. How good was that?
Oh, it was brilliant. And if you want to find Matt, you can find him on the website, mattgoodfellowpoet.com.
Absolutely. They need to
Yeah,
go and check him out.
love that. Really loved that. And where can we find you, Heather?
Oh, yeah, you can find me at wherereadingrocks.com. Come and see all the things that we do, or send me a message if you've got any questions. What about you, Jane? Where can we find out what you're up to?
Well, don't try and follow me on where I'm up to. I'm driving all around the country. But if you want to sort out writing or reading or spelling standards in your school, you can find me on janeconstein.com, and I'll help you implement the very best practice to improve your English curriculum. So, yeah, you can find me. You can email me or email Heather.
I was thinking there's quite a few .coms mentioned there. We really should mention Heather at the teachersquadpodcast.com. We'll get in
Yeah.
touch. Oh, you
Yeah.
did have an email this week though, didn't you, Jane?
I did have an email. I had an email that was just adorable, who said that they really appreciate that I show my gratitude for books by rubbing them on my tits. And before I lower the tone any further, I think we should say it is big love
From Heather and Heartbursts.
from Jane. See you next week.
See you, everyone.